Left-wing pundits have been especially outraged by the passage of this new Indiana law. Now, we shouldn't be surprised. Now, MSNBC host Al Sharpton, he's been leading the charge on this. Watch this.
This is a key moment for the country. Too often in our history, we've seen religion used to justify attacks on other people's rights, from slavery to Jim Crow to women's right to vote. That same fight is with us today, and we can't let it stand.
Now, let's also go back to 1993. This is at the signing ceremony when Bill Clinton signed this bill into law, federal law, back in 1993. Watch this.
We are a people of faith. We have been so secure in that faith that we have enshrined in our Constitution protection for people who profess no faith. And good for us for doing so. That is what the First Amendment is all about. But let us never believe that the freedom of religion imposes on any of us some responsibility to run from our convictions. Let us instead respect one another's faiths, fight to the death to preserve the right of every American to practice whatever convictions he or she has, but bring our values back to the table of American discourse to heal our troubled land.
All right, here with reaction is the director of the films 2016 and America, Dinesh D'Souza, is with us. I'm listening very closely to what Bill Clinton said in '93, and he said, this is what the First Amendment is all about, and let's respect one another's faith and fight to the death to preserve the right of every American to practice whatever conviction he or she has. Does that mean you can have controversial views? You know, where does that line get crossed in your mind, if at all?
Well, Sean, I think it's we can understand this better if we compare the religious freedom right in the First Amendment with the free speech right. Both are in the First Amendment. Now, it would be meaningless to talk about free speech and give it lip service if someone would say, well, you have that right, but you can't exercise it here and you can't exercise it there. In other words, the right would be abridged if you kept blocking it at every turn. Similarly, if you have a religious freedom right, that means the right to celebrate Easter. It means the right to practice Christian morality. It's the right to live by those religious principles. Now, what the left is basically saying is you can live by those religious principles except when we say so. And that is actually a way of undermining the religious freedom right.
So you're saying there's got to be a purity. You're saying there's got to be a purity to the First Amendment. But what do we say then to somebody that has a very controversial religious view? Radical Islamist. What do you say to a Satanist? Or somebody that wants to do things in the name of their religions that are not mainstream?
No, I agree. Just as with the First Amendment, there are extreme cases in which you can abridge the right. You can't shout fire in a crowded theater, for example. But by and large, because the First Amendment is so critical to political debate, we err on the side of letting it be. So similarly with religion, I think we should give it a wide berth. Well, I'm not saying that we should permit anything and everything. But here we're doing a kind of balancing where basically we talk about toleration a lot, and in fact the whole gay rights movement for decades has been appealing to toleration. In other words, you may not agree with us, but hold your nose and go along with it. But toleration, Sean, is a two-way street. If we're going to extend social tolerance to homosexuality, to transsexuality, how about a little toleration for Christians who are just trying to live by their code of beliefs?
You know, I call it selective political moral outrage here. And I know, for example, that on this program, we have been really outspoken about the treatment of gays and lesbians in countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia and some countries under Sharia, where they are murdered for their lifestyle. And I know, you know, gay and lesbians, they might disagree with me on gay marriage, or they might disagree with somebody, a religious person, and as it relates to their Christian views. But why are they so silent on the bigger issues of the day, which would be taking on radical Islamists? That would include women's groups and the treatment of women. That would be gay and lesbian groups on the slaughter of gays and lesbians in these other countries. Virtual silence from these groups that are so outraged and indignant over a law that Bill Clinton supported in '93 and Barack Obama supported. Why the?
Well,
why,
I think that.
Yeah, why?
I think, first of all, that Clinton's statement was a reflection of a kind of bipartisan sense that that religious freedom was as important a right as, say, free speech. I think what's going on, I mean, not only do you see the left not talking about the treatment of gays and lesbians abroad, but even at home, you'll rarely find homosexuals, for example, trying to force a Muslim baker to bake a cake for a gay wedding. In other words, this is a selective attack on Christianity, not on religion in general.
There are probably a few isolated incidents where this occurs, and I concede the point, understand their indignation and outrage. But the larger point is, I don't hear these same groups. I don't hear women's groups. They're angry about Sandra Fluck and who's going to pay for her birth control, or Mitt Romney having binders of women with women's resumes of people they want to hire. But I don't hear their outrage as a group speaking out against Sharia law and women not being able to vote or drive in Saudi Arabia, or not being able to leave their own homes without a male relative. Far bigger issues from my perspective. Why the silence on those issues?
The reason for the silence on those issues is that those are cases where the United States, if they were to mount a strong attack on radical Islam and its treatment of gays and lesbians, that would strengthen American foreign policy. That would make the case for more U.S. involvement or intervention. They don't want that. So, in other words, the issue is become a political ploy.
How about it makes the case that maybe the Clinton Foundation should stop taking money from countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Oman and some of these other places that have horrible and atrocious human rights records as it relates to women's rights?
I just hope that Indiana doesn't back down too much from this, because it's the geniality of Christians and their willingness to try to find accommodation and give in that increases the appetite of aggression on the part of the left.
All right, Dinesh, thank you.